This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by Strider Technologies. Strider is the first strategic intelligence tool built to help companies, government agencies, and research institutions protect their innovation and compete in a new era of global strategic competition. With trillions of open-source data points, Strider's technology and intelligence solutions enable you to proactively identify, manage, and respond to state-sponsored intellectual property theft and supply chain risks. Learn how to secure your technology talent and supply chains at striderintel.com. Ransomware hits Costa Rican government systems again. A Chinese threat actor deploys the bold move backdoor against unpatched FortiOS. Credential stuffing afflicts PayPal users. T-Mobile discloses a data breach. A cyber attack hits a remote Canadian utility. The Wagner Group sponsors a hackathon. Malek Ben Salem from Accenture describes prompt injection for chatbots. Our guest is Paul Martini from iBoss with insights on zero trust. And the FSB's Gamaradon APT runs a hands-on telegraph phishing campaign against Ukrainian targets. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Friday, January 20th, 2023. Happy Friday, everyone. Good to have you here along with us once again. Costa Rica's Computer Incident Center disclosed this week that it's been subjected to a ransomware attack that encrypted 12 government servers. None of them, the statement said, affected critical systems, and the attack has been contained, that is, confined, to the systems already affected. There's no official general attribution of the attack, nor any word on what strain of ransomware may have been involved. But, as the record by Recorded Future reminds readers, Costa Rica began receiving some hostile and determined attention from Conti last spring, with the gang going so far as to express its determination to bring down the government. That's not an expression of serious political purpose, but more like Conti saying, "Gosh, I'm telling you, brother, we're mad as heck and we want to get paid." Hang tough and get well soon, Costa Rica. A suspected Chinese threat actor is exploiting a recently patched critical flaw in Fortinet's FortiOS SSL-VPN, according to researchers at Mandiant. The threat actor began exploiting the vulnerability in October 2022, months before the flaw was disclosed publicly. Fortinet issued an advisory on December 12th, rating the vulnerability as critical, noting that the company was aware of an instance where this vulnerability was exploited in the wild. Mandiant says the threat actor targeted a European government entity and managed service provider located in Africa. The researchers discovered a new malware dubbed Bold Move that was developed to exploit this vulnerability. The threat actor appears to be sophisticated and well-funded. Note that there's been a patch for the vulnerability available since last month, and Fortinet users are urged to apply it. On January 18th, PayPal said in a security incident notice that unauthorized parties had accessed thousands of user accounts between December 6th and 8th of last year in a credential stuffing attack. Credential stuffing is one method of attack that can be made less likely to succeed by the application of some sound digital hygiene. This credential stuffing attack, Bleeping Computer explains, works by utilizing a bot that attempts various user credentials sourced in other leaks to access accounts on other sites. That is, it's a lazy hacker's way of brute forcing a credential. So it follows that those reusing passwords across accounts with shared usernames and emails or password recycling would be most likely to fall victim to these attacks. Forbes writes that this incident was reported as of yesterday to have given threat actors access to almost 35,000 PayPal accounts. In a statement to e-commerce bytes, PayPal asserts that no financial information was accessed and that payment systems were not affected. PayPal says they're reaching out to those who may have seen their accounts accessed. It's not clear that PayPal has that much to apologize for, since this seems to be a matter of user headspace and not a security flaw within PayPal itself. Mobile carrier T-Mobile disclosed a data breach yesterday that affects around 37 million postpaid and prepaid customer accounts, Security Week reports. The telecommunications firm said in a Thursday filing with the U.S. SEC that the data breach was the work of a malicious actor abusing an API without authorization. The wireless provider claims that the attack, discovered January 5th, was stopped within a day of discovery and that they had pinpointed the source, Bloomberg reports. The carrier says that there is no evidence showing that any other systems were affected and also did not appear to affect any sensitive data. Kulik Energy Corporation, QEC for short, in Nunavut, the largest and northernmost territory of Canada, was hit by a cyber attack on Sunday that took down some business systems, the CBC reports. QEC disclosed yesterday that the attack took down the systems at its customer care and administrative offices. The company has enlisted external cybersecurity experts to investigate the scope of the attack and determine which data was accessed. QEC says it will notify anyone whose information was accessed. Premier P.J. Akiagok said in a statement that various territorial and federal agencies are assisting with the recovery and that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are investigating the incident. The attacks didn't affect power plant operations, just business systems, and customers are presently unable to pay their bills via credit card. While it's still unclear whether the attackers accessed customer information, the company says customers should be vigilant just in case. Russia's Wagner Group private military corporation hasn't neglected information technology. The mercenary group sponsored a hackathon last month designed to contribute, the hired gun said, to the development of IT projects to protect the interests of the Russian army. The hackathon offers another example of the ways in which criminals serve as cyber auxiliaries for the Russian organs. The co-founder of the team that placed an honorable third, one Igor Turashev, is wanted by the U.S. FBI for his involvement with, among other things, the Drydex banking malware. Mr. Turashev was indicted in the Western District of Pennsylvania on November 13, 2019. The charges he faces, if the U.S. ever gets his hands on him, include conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, bank fraud, and intentional damage to a computer. Mr. Turashev should choose his vacation spots with care. BlackBerry researchers reported yesterday that they'd observed Gameradon operators running phishing attacks against Ukrainian targets. The phish bait consists of spoofed Ukrainian government or corporate documents. As BlackBerry puts it, the Gameradon Group's network infrastructure relies on multi-stage Telegram accounts for victim profiling and confirmation of geographic location, and then finally leads the victim to the next stage server for the final payload. This kind of technique to infect target systems is new. The final payload is an information stealer first observed in September of this past year. Gameradon, also known as Primitive Bear or Actinium, is generally believed to be an FSB operation run out of occupied Crimea. This particular operation seems to be hands-on and not heavily automated. And finally, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's CISA, has issued an industrial control system advisory affecting Hitachi Energy PCU 400. So read it and heed it, ye captains of industry. It's Friday afternoon. Do you know where your Hitachi ICS is? Coming up after the break, our guest is Paul Martini of iBoss with insights on zero trust. Malek Ben Salem from Accenture describes prompt injection for chatbots. Stick around. And now, a word from our sponsor, Strata. With multi-cloud, your apps and identities are distributed, making them hard to manage and secure. Strata takes all of your existing identity systems, integrates them into an identity fabric, a universal way for all your IDPs to work together. Never refactor your apps again. Never get locked into your IDP with one-to-one connectors. Identity orchestration helps you solve your biggest IAM problems, even the messy ones you thought were unsolvable. Bring Strata any IAM use case, like modernizing legacy apps to use passwordless authentication, hot switching between IDPs, or enabling identity operation resiliency. Strata's flexible, lightweight, and distributed architecture software is designed to extend the value of your identity infrastructure, no matter the complexity or scale. Share your time on a discovery call, and Strata will send you custom AirPods Pro. The multi-cloud identity wave is here, and you can ride it with Strata. Ready to learn more? Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. And we thank Strata Identity for sponsoring our show. And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. Paul Martini is CEO of security firm iBoss, where they recently released a report titled Bolster Your Company Defenses with Zero Trust Edge. I checked in with Paul Martini for insights for companies looking to make the transition to zero trust.
First and foremost is choose a framework that is based off a standard or create standards. So NIST, they're very well known for not just the risk management framework, the RMF, but they create a lot of different standards. And so by choosing NIST, the 800-207, I think what that's going to help with is first, it's vendor agnostic. It's really based off concepts and ideas that can be implemented. But secondly, as regulation comes down, from government to the commercial and enterprise sector, as well as into other sectors as well. It's going to make sure that you're going to be meeting fundamental compliance requirements, because ultimately we believe this becomes regulation and becomes law. And by doing it in a way that not only reduces risk, but helps you remain compliant is always helpful. So the first is pick a framework that you can understand and that is tangible and discrete. The second is really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. I think this really shouldn't be about just a term or technology that people hear about and think is a great idea. It should be really taking a step back and understanding what is zero trust and what does that mean and how does it reduce risk. CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, put out a report in 2021, which studied the fundamental root cause of ransomware. They partnered with the FBI, NSA, as well as other governments, the UK and Australia. And what they found was the top 3 initial infection vectors for ransomware in 2021 was unauthorized access. They were all based off unauthorized access, things like stolen credentials, phishing, or vulnerabilities. But the real question really comes down to why is it that when software becomes vulnerable, that it's accessible? Like, why is it that there's an attacker in Russia that can even access the application to begin with? And the reality is because the world looks a lot different today. Those applications used to be in a data center or used to be in your office, but now they're SaaS applications, meaning there's a path to the front door of that application. As soon as it becomes vulnerable, an attacker can take advantage of that vulnerability. And if you look at the number of vulnerabilities coming out on a daily basis from CISA, they just sit there waiting for these vulnerabilities to come out to take advantage of them. So I like this idea. This is fundamentally about resource access, controlling resource access, using process, people, and technology to basically put a front door in front of all of the critical resources of enterprise owns and ensure that those applications and data remain private at all times. I do also like all of the network requirements, the requirements to support zero trust architecture from NIST, the tenets. They have 7 tenets that are required to meet a zero trust architecture according to their framework. But looking at those tenets and those network requirements, making sure that you're really checking each of those boxes. They've a lot of work to really think about them and the impacts of what they mean. But following those, I think, will put you in a much better position.
You all recently released some survey data about zero trust. Were there any particular bits of information that you gathered that caught your eye or were surprising or unexpected?
I think they just reaffirmed what we already were seeing, which is, zero trust is a mainstream type of process and technology that's being implemented across federal governments and enterprises. It's top of mind. We think that there's a lot of confusion as well that happens when there's something that's new and coming, newer types of technologies, newer types of processes. But it also, we find that it's not just the government. It's reaffirming it's not just the government moving to these models. It's every company and every enterprise and every sector moving to this model. But reaffirmed that belief. I'm not sure if you're aware today, actually just a few hours ago, Okta announced a new breach. Did you see that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you think about that particular breach, the new one that just came out, it was source code that was stolen from GitHub. So basically, the Okta source code was stolen. And you just wonder, how is it that an attacker gets to the front door of their GitHub repository? Because if you're using a zero trust model, the zero trust gatekeeper or checkpoint is the job of that gatekeeper is to make sure that no one except for employees are touching that resource and everybody else is denied by default. So I think this type of technology, when you look at these types of breaches, can, in my opinion and in our opinion, it doesn't just slightly reduce risk. It's the best way, combined with all of the other good hygiene that you need to do with, other technology and processes. But it's the best way to get the biggest bang for the buck to reduce risk. And this is why we're seeing with the survey data and with the government that everybody's moving to this model, as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's been my experience that quite often when bits of technology like this come to the fore, there are several stages that it goes to where it first gets announced, people start to understand it, and then quite often the marketing people get a hold of it, and that leads to, I guess, what I would refer to as the eye-rolling zone, where it gets talked about so much that people kind of put up their defenses about it because they're hearing so much about it. It strikes me that zero trust is here to stay. We've gotten past that eye-rolling point, and people are really seeing that this is going to be with us for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a catch-22. When technology or processes come out and they're not really spoken about, or there's not a lot of vendors jumping onto that type of technology or marketing, the marketers, to your point, talking about it, it might mean that it's either too early or it's not that interesting or that helpful. But I think that, it's a catch-22 because when something is that helpful, then, of course, marketing wants to follow that because they know a lot of transition is going to occur. So you kind of have to get past that hurdle. And I do think that, there's still a lot of noise, but because of these standards, and this is why I appreciate NIST so much, is when you start looking at these standards that include requirements that show tangible deployment strategies. This helps reduce that noise as well as provide, guardrails to prevent people from, jumping off the cliff or, making decisions that are just for the sake of using a term.
That's Paul Martini from iBoss. The report is titled Bolster Your Company Defenses with Zero Trust Edge. We'll have a link in today's show notes. there's a lot more to this conversation. If you want to hear more, head on over to the CyberWire Pro and sign up for Interview Selects, where you'll get access to this and many more extended interviews. And joining me once again is Malek Ben Salem. She's the Managing Director for Security and Emerging Technology at Accenture. Malek, it is always great to welcome you back to the show. We've been seeing a lot of stories about chatbots. They've been getting a lot of attention with some of the developments with AI related to that. I know you and your colleagues have been doing some work when it comes to prompt injections and chatbots. What can you share with us about that today?
Thanks, Dave. So, we've seen language models and chatbots included gain some popularity recently. And again, just like any other AI models, we've talked before on this show about the vulnerabilities of AI and machine learning models in particular, but we have not talked about chatbots specifically. And it turns out that chatbots, just like any other machine learning models, are vulnerable to certain types of adversarial attacks. These are known as adversarial examples. If you think about, the computer vision systems that have been shown to be vulnerable to changes in, small changes in small changes in pixel in an image would completely make an image classifier fooled and misrecognize the image just by those few changes in pixels. Those types of attacks are also valid and work against chatbots. And one of these adversarial examples is, or adversarial attacks, is known as prompt injections. And this is akin to the SQL injections that we know and that we're familiar with other types of applications like web applications. So if you think about, let's say, a model that translates languages, and you have an API, language model with an API that you can call through the API to translate certain language. So you give it your input. Your prompt is to translate a certain sentence, and then you give it that input that you want to translate, which is, so you have your prompt and you have your input. It turns out that these models are vulnerable to these prompt injections in the sense that if you modify your input, you can completely make the chatbot do something wrong, such as, share information that it's not supposed to share, or tell you how, what's the last prompt it has received. So reveal some information that is not supposed to be returned back to the user.
How are these prompts surfaced? How do we learn about them?
So far, I think we need to do more work on developing security scanners to detect these types of bad inputs. And unfortunately, the security community is not focused on that. Most app scanners that I know of are not looking into this issue yet. And I think this is my point here, is to raise awareness about these types of attacks and hopefully draw the attention both for app scanners and also for the users of or the companies using these types of chatbots to think about these security vulnerabilities.
Is this a matter of just sort of pounding away on these things and throwing everything possible at them to see if any weird stuff gets spit out?
I think that's part of it. And definitely, there are some AI-driven proposals that, look at sanitizing the inputs or sanitizing the prompts to these to these chatbots. That's one approach. There's also another approach about sanitizing the output. If something of malicious prompt is detected before the chatbot returns the results to the end user, they can sanitize that, or maybe ignore to give any response at all. They're not 100% bulletproof. I think they would be useful, but it's not going to be the full answer. And we need to really think about how we don't even know enough about how these chatbots are, can leak information. What are the possible prompts that would make them to act not as expected. And so we definitely need more research, but we definitely also need to start building or think about building some tools that would help us secure them.
All right. Well, it's interesting stuff. Malek Ben Salem, thank you for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible. Find out more about sponsoring our programs at thecyberwire.com/sponsor. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Be sure to check out this weekend's Research Saturday and my conversation with Bridget O'Gorman from Symantec's Threat Hunter team. We're discussing their report, Billbug. State-sponsored actor targets cert authority and government agencies in multiple Asian countries. That's Research Saturday. Check it out. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karp, Eliana White, Peru Prakash, Liz Irvin, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Pearl Terrio, Maria Vermatsis, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Millie Lardy, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Catherine Murphy, Janine Daly, Jim Hoshite, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, Simone Petrella, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next week.
Hey everybody, Rick here. If you're anything like me, you hate commercials. So subscribe to CyberWire Pro and get all of our public podcasts ad-free, as well as our exclusive CyberWire Pro podcasts, briefings, articles, events, and bonus content. Designed for the busy professional, CyberWire Pro cuts through the noise and disinformation, giving you access to actionable reporting, trends, analysis, and insight on global events occurring in the industry, all at your fingertips. Subscribe to CyberWire Pro today for only $9.99 a month, or save with an annual subscription for only $99. That is well worth it to get rid of all of those commercials. Visit thecyberwire.com/pro to subscribe today.